The agenda is going to be, we're going to talk a little bit about social selling. I'm going to talk some stats that we have from a recent study done by the Sales Management Association that give a little bit of an idea about how social selling is being adopted and what tools people are using for it. I'll talk a little bit about the Social Selling Index, which is something that we recently launched at LinkedIn. And I'll also talk a little bit about making social selling a reality. And that's the area where Annika is going to really go into a lot more detail on. Feel free to tweet while we're presenting here. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, shout them out. We'll try and get to those during the presentation. So first of all, what social selling is not. And to me, social selling is not the, how you doing? It's not a, hey, you been on a course lately? That's small talk, that's chit chat. That's stuff we've been doing for our whole lives, right? That's not social selling. And I'll get into what social selling is, but one of the reasons social selling has come about is the buying process fundamentally changed. We already talked about this a bit earlier, and it is caused by that the consumers today, the business-to-business consumers today, they are technology savvy and they're socially empowered. They gather a lot of information themselves. They go through and they're much more prepared when they finally meet a salesperson. And they have their own agenda and they have their own sources of information. Now, one of the things that's become so unique in these days is that not only do we know so many people, because I think my dad knows more people than I ever did, or than I do, but he never had the kind of access to his network that I do. And whether we're on the sales side or we're on the buying side today, we have access to that information. We have access to that information in an unprecedented way, and we can use that information to establish relationships, to establish more meaningful relationships. Because that's something that hasn't changed. People want to buy from people. They want to do business with people. They want to do business with people that understand them, that understand their drivers, their needs. They want to do business with people that understand their business. Not somebody that's going to call them and ask them, so what does your company do? Right? They want to make sure that that they understand their business. Plus, they want to make sure that they can have confidence in you that you're going to be able to address their problem. So those three things haven't changed. Now, the three things that I find that have changed a lot in this game that social selling really changes is first, finding people. Leveraging connections, leveraging these live networks that we have that are always growing, always changing, rather than some static phone book that we might, or some static Rolodex that we're looking at. Expanding beyond our own network and looking at the company's network. Who are my colleagues? Who are all these people that are on the same team that own that same number that I do? And how can I use their networks? And then being much more targeted in terms of decision makers. Who am I going after? No more spray and pray. No more just getting much more focused. Who are those people? Who do I need to expand to so I won't be single-threaded in an account? Who are the decision makers and finding those people that are worthwhile? Then second is relating to people. Getting beyond the general information that we may have. We may have some very specific information in our CRM system about this person. But let's get beyond that. Let's get beyond all this information that people are freely sharing online, and use that information. Gathering intelligence, right? It's not about just blasting more data and give me more data. I'm overwhelmed. It's about being really intelligent and selective on the data. One of the things that's been really interesting is I have a lot of these conversations with companies that as a time stamp, maybe last year, they started experimenting with a lot of the social systems that are out there. They said, hey, my team, my company, we need to be involved in this. We need to get going on this. I need to be tweeting. I need to update my LinkedIn. I need to update my Facebook. I need to be on these blogs. And hey, they tell me that I can't just be stalking. I need to be contributing. I need to be tweeting out there. I need to be contributing comments and liking on blogs and all those things. And it's overwhelming. It's just become overwhelming. And the conversations I have now are a lot around, well, this is not something that's that I can continue to do. So it's not something repeatable, not something that I can standardize on. And now people are really looking, where can I find a collection of information, a collection of intelligence that allows me to be scalable in this? And that's a big part of this relating, right? Being able to get that relevant information so we can have a meaningful conversation. Find, relate, and then lastly, well, actually engaging with the individual, right? Engaging in a meaningful way. Engaging in a way that we want to be engaged with. Engaging in a way that will show that you understand them, you understand their business, and they can have confidence and trust in you that you can actually help them. Being collaborative with them, understanding it's their buying process. It's not necessarily the methodology that got drilled into your head during sales training that they're going to follow, but that they're going to want to go through their process. One of the things that I'll have in here is a little slide here to just kind of go from, you can kind of see for social selling foundation, where are you compared to where you want to be? And that'll be in the slides that you can kind of go through. You can go through it with your marketing team, with your sales team, and do a little bit of a self-evaluation and hopefully spur some good discussion. The next piece that I want to go into is a recent study that was done by the Sales Management Association, and that talks a little bit about what are people adopting and how are they using social media during the sales process. We can probably spend an hour on each one of these slides going into sort of the different dynamics behind them, but I think overall they give a pretty good flavor of how people are finding a way to make it useful. One of the things that jumps out is that it's really early in the process here, right? Organizations have not really adopted. People see that there's potential there, but the use of social media is very sporadic, it's very experimental in sales organizations. In terms of customers' engagement, which best describes the engagement of your organization's important customers? What you see is on the left-hand side is what people are not yet using. On the right-hand side, we go into what people are using on a regular basis. And what we see in terms of professional network and professional interaction is that LinkedIn is kind of far and away becoming sort of a standard in terms of that professional interaction. And one thing as we go through this, I think now looking at the same thing in terms of the firm engagement, so how are firms engaging in this? We're again seeing that LinkedIn is starting to be a kind of a de facto professional place for people to engage and have their relationships. And one of the things that I want to really underscore here is I'm in no way saying I don't think that the other ones are as important, because I think they are critical. I think, to me, that the way I interpret some of this dynamic is that no matter who you're selling to, what level in the organization, what size organization, depending on what your territory is, if you think it's geographic, if it's size of company, if it's type of industry, whatever your territory is, and whatever type of solution you're selling, potentially selling something that's complex, or you're selling something that's very expensive, or a long sales cycle, short sales cycle, all those factors will very much determine how you interact with your customer, right? We all know that. We have different personas and they like to interact differently. And I think that's what happens in social media as well. Depending on who you're selling to, they may tweet. They may be on blogs. You may have to engage with them in different places. All that said, the one place that's consistent and foundational, no matter which marketplace you're selling to, no matter which target customer, they're going to be on LinkedIn. I mean, what we're seeing is that LinkedIn kind of becomes the de facto one-to-one interaction, right? That personal interaction, that professional resume where you have it is on LinkedIn. One of the things that's really interesting is when we start looking at what are you using the different social media solutions for. And it's interesting to see, I'll make the self-serving comment, and that yes, LinkedIn is the farthest one on each one of those. But I think what's important is to start looking at, and for you to start thinking about, what does this tell you about the way that you can use social media in your sales organization? We've got job candidate information at the top. Let's put that aside. Thought leadership, industry trends, building a brand, competitive information, generating leads, customer information, promoting your products and services. These are all things that people are engaging with and using social media for. And to me, what I'm seeing is that there's a shift there in terms of thinking about using social media for all these different activities. I'm starting to think about how can I do that in a standardized fashion. How do I implement that for my company and for my sales organization? And a lot of that again comes back to when you think about implementing this, people, process, and product. You know, we've all heard this, right? It becomes in people. In terms, it's education. There's a lot of education that needs to happen in terms of individuals that are out there, individuals in the sales organization, individuals in the marketing organizations, sales operations, business development. Process, a lot of education and re-looking at how does sales and marketing operate together. Maria with Marketo was talking about some great examples about how the lead gen process, the qualification process, and the follow-up process is getting tighter and tighter integrated. And what I'm seeing is, in my role, over the past 5-6 years, it's changed incredibly from how much marketing and sales are collaborating together. And that's a critical thing to look at in terms of how that process happens. And how often does sales and marketing meet together? Because that's going to be a critical part to how do you turn some of these things that are by nature one-to-many activities that a marketing firm does and turn them into meaningful one-to-one interactions with a sales organization. And the last thing is product, right? Thinking about what are technology solutions that allow you to take all that information and make intelligence out of it. What systems are out there that will take that very busy, numbers-driven sales rep, pay attention to this, to make it feasible that they can do this and meet all their other goals. We also look at how much time are people spending, and we definitely see that people are spending a considerable amount of time. I'm actually less concerned here about, I don't want to emphasize so much where they're spending time, but really think about, there's a significant amount of time that folks are spending. And we're seeing the studies that the individuals that do spend the time to do the research, to get the intelligence, have significantly better performance, in qualifying and their pipeline early on in the early sales stages. We have a social media strategy. This is really interesting. And it's interesting when you take a look at for my total organization versus my sales organization. And how much more the overall organization seems to be prepared than the sales organization seems to be prepared. It's even more telling in this. In terms of having received training, having received the appropriate amount of training for the organization to use social media. And that comes back to a point that I was making earlier. There's a cultural shift here. There's something that we need to help individuals make the most out of. We cannot rely on people experimenting on their own and figuring out what's the best recipe for me with this vast universe of data that's out there, vast amount of information that's out there. It's really up to us as leaders to be able to go out there and put a stake in the ground and says, this is a best practice. This is the way that we standardize. We have a repeatable model in our organization of how we best use social media. And given the status of the industry, I mean, this is a great place if you want to build a competitive differentiation over your competitors right now. Lastly, sales organizations realize there's tremendous upside here, tremendous potential here. It's not difficult to see for sales individuals, so tremendous potential here. So with that, what I wanted to do is shift gears a little bit into what we call the LinkedIn Social Selling Index. What we have found is that kind of what we're talking about here in terms of the adoption and the measuring and how well am I doing, we really found that it's important for us to help companies to better articulate where they are right now. So in these hundreds of conversations that we have every month about social selling, about where people are, how people are using social media, how people are using LinkedIn. One of the things we keep going back to is we want to take a look at a way that we can standardize looking at where we are. We can measure so that we can improve. And so one of the things that we developed was this concept of a social selling index. A social selling index that allows us to measure from 0 to 100, provide a score, and that score is based on 4 characteristics. And these 4 characteristics then also provide a good framework for us to think about in terms of how do we strengthen our adoption of social selling and our use of social selling. First is strengthening the brand. So this is the brand, the way we understand the brand of the company, right? We look at it in terms of company pages, in terms of company activity on LinkedIn. And again, I'm going back now. For us, this is very LinkedIn-centric, of course. But looking at that. But secondly, also, think about the brand of your sales rep. How strong is the brand of your individual sales rep? You have to believe, I mean, you can disagree with me, but you have to believe that every prospect your sales reps call, they're going to look up their LinkedIn profile. It's probably not 100%, but I'm sure it's a big amount. I don't have a phone conversation with anybody without looking at their LinkedIn profile. So what are they going to do? They're going to look at your sales rep's LinkedIn profile, and then what are they going to do? They're going to say, oh, that is my impression of this company. That is my impression of the professionalism of this company, the quality of the product, the quality of the services, and the trust that I'm going to build with this company is based on this sales rep. Think about all the great things we can do to help those sales reps strengthen their brand, to help the sales professional build something that not only they're proud of, but that we're proud of as a company, and they being our representative. That's about the brand. The second is then about extending the reach. Mike talked about this a little bit earlier, right? But thinking about taking these sort of wonderful fingerprints, these sort of universes that are so unique, and saying, okay, how do I take these and bring them all together? How do I take all these unique networks? Because that's why I hired these sales rep. I hire sales rep. Ted from Warside earlier spoke about that, right? You don't hire sales reps that are all cookie cutter the same. You hire sales reps that are different, that they complement each other, because one of the reasons they do that is because they're better. And one of the things that makes them better is that you combine all their reaches, and you combine the different backgrounds that they have, and the experiences they have, and the people that they know, and their networks, and then you make the most of that. That's another thing that we look at when we look at that social selling index. The third is gathering intelligence. The activity that sales reps have on LinkedIn. Are they searching for people? Are they are they taking information out? Are they sharing information? Are they connecting with individuals? And are they making the most out of the filtering that they can do, the searching they can do, the targeting they can do? And then thirdly, it's the concept of contributing insights. The concept of creating and actually delivering more information to that network and to that community. And what that does, it doesn't only build their credibility, but it also builds your company's credibility, right? It builds your credibility that you're part of a thought leader. You're part of a trusted source of information for that industry and for that company. And it strengthens the image of your sales rep. So those are the 4 things that we measure when we look at the social selling index. We look at the brand, we look at your reach, we look at your activity and gathering intelligence, and we look at what are you contributing, what are you giving back to the group. Now what we do is we then take that stuff and we mush it all together in some sort of a statistician, scientific way that's beyond my pay grade. And then we look at it. We give you a score. That's really that simple. Give you a number, because that's all you are to us. You're a number. But we take a look at it and we say, okay, well, what's your number? And we can track that number over time. We also take that number and take a look at in terms of other companies? Where are you? You can start benchmarking, so we can take a look at that. You can take a look at how you're using LinkedIn, so we can get some information about how many connections you have or how many page views you have. But what we do is we compare that also to your top users of LinkedIn. So we take a look at your power users, for example, and we can say, okay, well, they're having this kind of activity. They have these many more connections. They're doing these many more searches. They're looking at these many more pages. They have these many more recommendations. They have that much stronger of a brand and activity on LinkedIn. We take a look at how many of those are the power users. So we take a look at that, and based on that, we can now work with you, and you can work just on yourself, right? You can say, okay, well, we're at a 25 right now. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get to a 30 by the end of Q1. And these are the things we're going to programatize to have this engagement and to lift our score on this LinkedIn profile. So what we're trying to do is really say, let's start packaging this up. You know, before you know, you kind of, this is so fascinating. I mean, to me, I get so excited about this. Remember the charts we were looking at before? How early we are in adopting this? I mean, we're just, you know, so there's so much opportunity here for us to improve, for us to engage, for us to differentiate ourselves in our own careers. It's just a really exciting time for it. So what I want to do now is hand the time over to Annika. Annika is going to talk a little bit about, she's got a tremendous amount of experience working with companies that are on this journey, starting the journey and partial way down the journey, and she'll talk a little bit about her experience with that.
I'm really excited about that social selling index, by the way. I can't wait to put it into the real world. And I also want to tell you, I feel like I'm channeling Bob Perkins now, because I'm really excited about the opportunity to show the business return of social selling, sell that vision internally, and then help companies implement it. And I feel like I'm reliving my career a little bit, because back in the 80s, when I was an entry-level employee at Oracle, there was a lot of skepticism about selling enterprise-level software by phone as opposed to face-to-face. You know, go back to the video that we started the day with. Tons of skepticism, that'll never work, this is too complicated. And now, looking at Oracle as one example, multi-billion-dollar global organization later, Oracle Direct, we've proven that phone and now web and next social is the way to connect with and engage buyers and close them. I want to tell you about two companies. One company is a very small startup called Pakra. They are a technology company. They sell a SaaS video-based training solution with back-end metrics, analytics. And take a look at these numbers. They are the numbers that executives' teams care about. They care about pipeline and they care about revenue. And if we can tie social selling to those things in the sales department, this seals the deal. How many of you are with emerging startup companies or relatively small companies in the room? Okay. I'd like to hear your stories at the end of this. We're also going to talk about a company on the other end of the spectrum. Mike mentioned them this morning. IBM is on a journey to become a digital and social leader. This is a decree from the CEO of the company. So the sales department, along with the rest of the company, is trying to figure out what that means. And of course, put those in terms that are meaningful to the CEO, because you don't invest in something without seeing the return. We're seeing some very early results from pilot programs, and on the strength of those pilot programs, we're exploring what to do next. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. First of all, I want to talk you through how did these companies figure out where to start. In Pakra's case, it was simple. The CEO said, we are a social company. I want to be born social. I want to brand ourselves social. Everybody in the company, spiff up your LinkedIn profile, put your put your photograph up there and make it sing. As Mike said this morning, it's not about selling yourself to a recruiter, it's making yourself look like somebody that a customer wants to buy from. Put interesting information out there that's relevant to that company's business. Make it interesting and appropriate for someone who is looking to buy your product. With IBM, the place to start was, where are the buyers? There's so many products, right? They sell so many things. Who is actively using social? Because we don't want to put a lot of effort and money into something where the buyers aren't there yet. So research was done to understand where to start. Who is involved? Again, with PACRA, it's easy. The CEO says, we're going social. Everybody is involved. The IT department is involved. They tweet, they put LinkedIn updates on their profiles regularly. They are engaged as a company. In IBM, it's also a company-wide initiative. I'm going to talk specifically about inside sales because in this case, inside sales is driving a number of initiatives. One is what they call a social eminence initiative, which we've heard before is about branding yourself social. It's about having an up-to-date profile, about being actively updating it. And that really is something that is native to some people, and they're already doing it. And to some people, that is completely foreign and a new way to communicate and a new way to be seen. So that's something I'll talk about more in a minute. Moving from experimentation to scalable process is something that all of us inside sales managers deal with every day, right? We want to find out how to make one inside sales rep who has best practices and is best performing, spread that across the entire sales organization. So how do we do that? We do that with training and sales enablement and measuring. And we heard about playbooks this morning. We put all that in the playbook. Just one quick example is rather than just talk about phone calls and emails, how about adding LinkedIn updates, LinkedIn invitations to connect, InMails? Why not measure that? Why not integrate that into the process and see perhaps with that and without that what the differing results are? That is something that is very interesting right now that we're experimenting with, and we're showing interesting metrics with the non-social versus the social sales teams. Also, the ownership of sales, social media for sales is a big topic, and many different companies have different cultures on this. Obviously, in the case of the small company, the CEO is driving this. In the case of our projects with IBM, it's the inside sales team partnered with the field sales team, where inside sales is taking responsibility for bringing field sales up to speed and really walking them through what does this mean and why is it important. And they've started at the very top, the executive level, and we're doing some of that education because they feel an outside perspective, peer-to-peer, someone who's run a big sales organization before is going to be listened to, as opposed to some inside sales rep who might be 20 or 30 years younger who doesn't necessarily know how to speak to an executive. So that's a big part of in a big company. Are any of you in big companies, by the way? I forgot to ask that. Very good. We want to hear your story too. Okay. So ownership of social media can come from any number of departments, probably very different in a large company versus a small company. Often we see what Jeremiah Aoyang at Altimeter Group calls a hub and spoke model, where there's one organization that might be marketing communications or PR or compliance, kind of setting the rules and standards, and then the departments, the lines of business, follow those rules and compliance definitions, but they customize that to their audience, whether they're in sales or in marketing, whatever department they're in. Social is used at every stage of the sales cycle. This is pretty much like the phone and the web. Where is your prospect at that stage? Are they engaging with you on LinkedIn? Are they engaging on you by phone? This is not something that is specific to just prospecting or any other part of the sales cycle. It is just integrated with your other communications means. Now, there are specific things you can do with social at different stages of the sales cycle, and those can be part of the playbook. We can certainly provide, for example, customized LinkedIn updates, customized tweets that, I should say customizable. You can give a template that a rep can then change according to the situation and add his or her voice to. But it's nice to give somebody something to start with, especially if they're new to the medium. As we know, there's a whole different language in Twitter than in English. So giving someone a head start is a good idea. And then finally, getting adoption from sales reps is a big topic. And some of the companies that we see experimenting with gamification are seeing gains in this regard. We also see pilot programs as a very good way to show early results that then take the skeptical people away from their skepticism and say, wow, if this group could generate 4 times the order volume or 90% of their pipeline or whatever it is, gee, maybe there's something here. I'd like to try that. It's not going to be every group right away, but over time, as more and more people are willing to try new things and those results are shown, pretty soon you have, a global multi-billion-dollar opportunity if you follow my history with inside sales. Adoption from the sales reps at the smaller company is pretty much, they don't think about doing anything different. It's just the way they communicate with customers. And given that they measure everything and they know where their prospects are coming from, it's a no-brainer. I want to also let you know that it's important to understand where your customers are. People say, oh, my buyers are not engaging with social media. And I think some of the executives at IBM thought that too, until they did research. And they found out that this is really important. This is something that may not be the majority today, but in the future, this is something that absolutely will be important. And if you're looking for a competitive advantage, if you're looking for incremental pipeline and revenue in 2013, these are things to look at. We're all looking for revenue in new places, right? And it takes some experimentation and some embracing new technologies and new approaches to really get that competitive edge. I want to leave you with this thought before we open up to Q&A and engagement. Inside sales leaders are driving social selling. Bob said it this morning. We are already thinking about scalable phone and web interaction. Social is just another way of engaging with people on the web. It's extremely powerful. We get a lot of information, understanding where people are engaging socially, what they're saying, what they're representing in terms of their company, what they're sharing on their blogs, what's important to them as individuals and their companies. This is what's important in succeeding in today and tomorrow's sales world. So it's time for us to hear from you. Does anybody have a story that they'd like to share, successes or experiments that you are conducting now? I don't think we have shy people in the room, do we? Anybody want to be brave? Please.
We actually just, my name's Tom, I work at EMC Corporation. We just piloted this past year 3 people that their whole job is focused on social selling, so they handle all of our inbound requests. They divert inbound questions onto sales reps. We've had a lot of success, but unfortunately the only problem that we're running into is that those people that use social selling aren't viewed, I think, at the same way as our inside sales reps are. And where we've had a little bit of trouble is those people are I think they get characterized by their peers as individuals that spend all their day on like Twitter and things like that, rather than actively dialing for dollars and finding opportunities. So I'd really be interested in hearing your perspective around the pilot group and how you were able to, at a big company like IBM, gain some adoption from people that maybe look at social selling as maybe not a positive thing, but something
Yeah, and it's a great question. Did I understand correctly that you have a separate team that does communication via social versus phone and web?
Yeah, so there are 3 people, and what they do is they get all of our inbound requests. They'll actively look for things online from some of our major customers to see if there could be opportunities, and then pass those leads on to the sales reps.
Okay, but they're not using phone and web?
No, yes they are. Yeah, to communicate with the customers, yes.
Okay.
Like if there's an inbound request, they may call that customer, but they're not doing a lot of active prospecting like a traditional, salesperson might be doing.
So they're a traditional inbound group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So you're saying that their status in the company is not quite what the rest of the sales organization is?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Well, my response to that would be, why are you limiting social to just the inbound group? Social can be integrated in your outbound group, into your major accounts group, into your field selling group. There's a lot of opportunities for selling, social selling, that may be untapped for you. And understanding what just phone and web metrics are versus phone, web, and social metrics is where you can tell where the incremental differences are in pipeline generation, in revenue generation, at conversion at any stage in the sales cycle. There might be a conversion in lead nurturing in the middle of the funnel that could be very differentiating.
One of the things that I've observed a lot, I kind of made this example of a year ago to today, kind of a lot of conversation and things that I'm seeing. And definitely a common thread is a year ago, a lot of the conversation, who owns social media? And what I'm seeing more and more now is that, well, sales owns part of social media, marketing owns part of social media, service owns part of social media, because it's just part of the way they interact, right? It's kind of like saying, well, who owns email in your company? Well, okay. Or who owns the web? Who owns internet? Who does internet in your company? Well, everybody does. And I think now it's also starting to become much more, to Annika's point. Another thing that we actually did quite successfully at a previous company was, in order to sort of dip our toe into water and get moving with this, was that at that point, a lot of the listening and a lot of the marketing was done, social marketing was done in the marketing team. So I had a team that was the social marketing team. And because that social marketing team had the expertise, they had the tools, they were able to listen and so forth. What we did, rather than focus the sales guys, we kind of let the sales guys keep doing what they were doing, and we had a little playbook for them. But the marketing team then said, hey, we found this person that was tweeting XYZ. And they took that and basically internally transferred it over to one of our SDRs, and the SDR would then follow up in a very non-salesy way, because they knew that that's where it was coming from. But that's a way that you can take your team and you kind of say, hey, let's do a little bit of this with the people that are already using it. And going back to what I was saying before, sales and marketing is just getting closer and closer.
Absolutely.
Did you have a question? I apologize.
Well, so you actually kind of touched on that when you mentioned who owns social media, because that's what I was going to ask. In my group, we have inside sales, outside sales, marketing, pre-sales, consultants, and the whole bit. And within my organization, we've been looking at the possibility of having pre-sales own social media, since they're the most advanced. They have the most understanding of our product. But so you had already touched on that. So.
Who do you work for?
I work for IDBS. We're a software provider for biotech and pharma and chemistry. I guess beyond that, would you be able to define like a particular demographic that is using social media more? For example, we're selling into scientists predominantly. And I find personally that when I use LinkedIn to communicate with the scientists, I'm not getting a lot of success. Would you find that to be the case, or is there a better way?
Well, it definitely differentiates based on the persona that you're going after, just like anywhere else, right? And that's what the point I was making earlier was, depending on who you're selling to, who your target audience is, you may use different channels. To scientists, like my brother, I always, when people question my intelligence, I always tell them that my brother's got a PhD in applied mathematics from Caltech. So, don't question my intelligence. I mean, come on. But he and his wife, she's a programmer, she's a master's in applied mathematics. They're not really on LinkedIn. They don't do anything on this. It's not, that's not really their sense. They're looking at different things. They're more on very specific, very specialized blogs, very specialized forums. And that's probably the best way to reach that target audience. I'm not sure that's going to be the same a year from now that it is today. Yeah. My guess, it's probably going to evolve and it's going to change. But I think that holds true.
So what department would you say within an organization is the most on LinkedIn, like an IT department versus?
I think you're looking at clearly HR, you're looking at sales, you're looking at marketing, you're looking at biz dev, accounting. I think definitely anybody that graduates with sort of a business degree, sort of in that, and it goes into those roles, right? I think a lot of it has to do with how much external contact do you have with other professionals, because I think that if you have that in your job function, that makes you appreciate the importance of these relationships being important to your career and the success of your position. So,
thank you.
I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions.
I have a question for Veronica or maybe Ralph. Can you give an example of a typical day, or specifically what a up-to-speed, ramped-up sales rep, knowing and doing everything social that makes sense, what are the 5 or 6 things that he or she is involved in? Just tactically, what do they do?
Do you want me to take that?
Go ahead.
Well, it goes back to all the great tips that we got from both Mike and Rolf. It's about really doing the research in advance and understanding what's going on for this person, right? What's important to them, what's going on in their business, what are they tweeting about, what are they blogging about, are they posting things on their LinkedIn profile? So really understanding that human element rather than giving them a sales pitch. And then trying to understand how to engage with them. And we all know it's really important nowadays to keep trying to reach somebody in different ways, and not just once, but several times. So it's kind of a little alchemy, right? And it used to be just the phone, and then it was the phone and email and web, and now it's social. And what we see is that sometimes people who don't engage in email will engage in a LinkedIn invitation. Pakra is a great example of that. They front end all of their prospecting outreach with an invitation to connect. And they might not stay in LinkedIn, they might go to email, they want to demo their product. But that's a differentiator because they're ahead of their competition. And that's where their audience is. And then as the sales cycle progresses, there might be another LinkedIn in mail, or it might be email. But it's understanding where the prospect is and how they're going to respond. And as you know better than most people, it's not just calling 100 times, it's mixing it up. If you have to follow them to the parking lot just to get a conversation, right?
I think that's where we also have to take the responsibility to say, we need to put a playbook together, going back to Ralph Barcy's talk, right? We need to put a playbook together. We need to be teaching these. And honestly, if anybody that calls me and hasn't looked me up on LinkedIn, that's an insulting experience, right? I mean, really, right? If you haven't even taken the 30 seconds to pull me up on LinkedIn and you're going to ask me a question, come on.
Well, you mentioned that adoption is relatively, slow. And besides the normal factors in just adopting any new idea or change, are there limiting factors that either of you see that organizations could help with? Like, are there limiting factors of time and resources, and are there things that people should do to help their team so they have better profiles, better posts, et cetera, et cetera?
It's a great question, and this is something that's very controversial, but in very traditionally minded sales organizations, often found with very large companies when people have been selling for 20 or 30 years. We're experimenting with having a team of people help them with that. Now, in the social world, that's really not okay. You're supposed to be authentic and do everything yourself and tweet yourself and update your own profile. But we all know that executives have administrative assistants answering their email. So if the answer is you can get them started in social by giving them an assistant or equivalent, we're trying to see if that's going to work. We all know that executives have people tweet for them and do other things for them. So I think the proof is in the pudding as to what the results will be.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the exciting part about this. You know, there's a lot of experimenting still going on. There's experimenting going on in terms of how much can you pre-write a lot of these things for the sales pip, and if you do that, then it's disingenuous. Larry really wants me to get off the stage right now, so I really appreciate it. Both Annika and I will be here to answer questions. We've got a table outside with LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your questions and your attention. I appreciate it.